I didn't plan on leaving the ring in the ice bucket. That was improv. But what else do you do when your fiancé is laughing 2 tables away with a man who orders drinks like he owns the bar? You adapt. You pivot. You pretend you're not shaking. I had booked the table at Castle and Lark 2 months in advance. Quiet, upscale, candlelit. The kind of place you don't go unless you're about to propose or end something important. I thought we were coming to talk about florists. Turns out she came for the bartender. At first, I sat through dinner alone, like an idiot. I even ordered the bottle of Chardonnay she liked. The waiter kept pouring it like I wasn't dying inside. 34 minutes in, I realized she wasn't coming. Or worse, she was already here. I got up to leave, turned the corner toward the exit, and then froze. There she was. White blouse, gold hoops, her laugh. I could recognize it through a hurricane. And next to her, that same guy from the gallery opening. The one I asked her about last month. The one she said was just obsessed with Basquiat. They were close. Not a fair close. Worse, familiar close. The kind of closeness that comes with repetition. I didn't make a scene. I asked the bartender for a small bucket of ice and a clean napkin. She blinked, confused. I didn't explain. I went back to the table, took the ring from my jacket, wrapped it in the napkin, nestled it in the ice, set it on their table while they were turned away, and left. But that's not the part that keeps me up at night. It's what I found in our apartment when I got home. That changed everything. I left Castle and Lark without looking back, but my reflection in the restaurant window stayed with me. I looked weightless, like someone had cut the ropes holding me to this life, and now I was just drifting above it all, watching my own unraveling with some detached sense of pity. The air outside was cold, not winter cold, but that damp kind of chill that slips down your collar and makes you realize your body has boundaries. I remember thinking that was the most physical I'd felt in months. Everything else had been muted. Her late nights editing photos, my quiet dinners reheated in the microwave, her screen always tilted just far enough away from me on the couch. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the occasional sound of my tires hitting a pothole and my own thoughts trying to fill the void with theories. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe he was a client. Maybe she didn't see me. Maybe I misunderstood. But the napkin-covered ring in the ice bucket said otherwise. That was real. That happened. When I opened our front door, I expected everything to feel normal. Or at least fake normal, like the set of a sitcom where nothing bad ever really happens. But the silence hit me like a wave the second I stepped inside. Our cat, Maple, didn't run to the door like she usually did. No warm scent of Talia's weird essential oil diffuser. Just stillness. And something else. Something I couldn't name at first, like the room had been disturbed. The first thing I noticed was that the front closet was open. That door is always closed. Inside, her suitcase was gone. Not the small rolling one she used for gigs. The big one. The one we took to Colorado. Empty hanger swinging next to where her parka used to be. She hadn't just left for the night. She had packed. And yet, the photo was still on the wall. Our framed picture, taken by her friend, of us at the lake house last summer. The one where I'm mid-laugh because she whispered something wildly inappropriate right before the shutter clicked. It was still hanging by the door. Crooked, like someone had bumped it on the way out. I just stood there staring at it for a minute. That photo was her favorite. She said it made us look real. So why take your socks, but leave your favorite memory? I went upstairs. Slowly. My legs felt like they were made of rusted metal. Every step creaked louder than it should have. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open with my fingertips, like I was afraid it might burn me. The bed was made, but her drawer was half open. Empty. Her vanity, too, missing the little cluttered army of makeup and hairpins. Even her toothbrush was gone. And yet again, the details didn't add up. Her favorite book was still on the nightstand. Her necklace, the tiny silver leaf I bought her last Christmas, was hanging from the lamp. And then, on the bed, I saw something that didn't belong. A card. Plain, white, blank envelope. No writing. No stamp. Just placed there. Intentionally. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes like it might detonate. Then, hands trembling, I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single sentence. In her handwriting. You always said you'd never see it coming. That's it. No signature. No explanation. Just that. And that's when the shaking really started. Because I had said that. Years ago. As a joke. About breakups. I told her that if she ever left me, It would be like a ghost vanishing. No screaming. No fight. Just gone. Like she was never there. And she remembered. And she did it. Except now, I wasn't sure this was just about cheating. Something was wrong. Deeper than betrayal. Darker than infidelity. Because she left her memory behind on purpose. Like it was bait. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I tried. I really did. I lay in our bed. No, my bed now. Fully dressed, staring at the ceiling while the fan spun overhead like a ticking clock. Every few minutes I'd glance at the envelope again, sitting on the nightstand where her book used to be. That one sentence looped in my head like a cursed melody. You always said you'd never see it coming. The more I read it, the more I realized it wasn't a note. It was a message. Not to explain anything. Not to apologize. But to remind me that I had been wrong. That she had won. That I had been playing checkers while she played something else entirely. Around 5:30 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and walked downstairs. I didn't turn on any lights. I just stood barefoot in the kitchen, letting the tile floor cool the burning soles of my feet. I poured myself a glass of water, but forgot to drink it. My eyes wandered to the living room. And then something caught me. Her camera bag was gone, her laptop charger too, but the laptop itself was still there. On the coffee table. Closed. Plugged in. Like it had been used recently. Now, this might sound petty or paranoid, or both, but I knew her laptop habits. She never, ever left it just sitting out like that. Especially not open. It was her lifeline. Her vault. She guarded it like it was sacred. So, yeah, I opened it. But she was logged out. Which was not normal. Even if she left for a work trip, she never signed out of everything. And I mean everything. It was like a digital ghost town. No browser history, no recent files, no cached logins. Not even her wallpaper. Just the default operating system background. The most haunting shade of gray I've ever seen. I stared at it for a moment, unsure whether I should try to guess her password. But then I noticed something else. The external hard drive she always kept attached, the one labeled Weddings 2021-24, was plugged in. Still mounted. I clicked it, expecting to see the usual JPGs, Lightroom files, some silly blooper reels she sometimes saved when kids made faces at the camera. But it wasn't any of that. Just one folder. Untitled. Last modified, yesterday. I opened it. Inside were 4 videos. Each named with a date. No titles. No tags. I clicked on the most recent one. 08_17. MOV. At first, it was black. Then static. Then her. Facing the camera directly. No makeup. Hair tied up. Wearing that oversized maroon hoodie I thought she'd lost last year. And the weirdest part? She wasn't talking. She was staring. At me. Well, not at me, but at the lens. But it felt like me. Like she was watching me watch her in real time. The video was silent. No music. No breathing. Just this stare. I watched the whole thing. 7 minutes and 24 seconds of her, sitting on the edge of our couch, barely blinking. And then, right at the end, she smiled. But not the kind of smile you give someone you love. It was the kind of smile you give someone who has no idea they're about to walk into a trap. Then the screen went black. I closed the laptop. Suddenly the silence in the room felt unbearable, like the walls were pressing in. And that's when I realized. She wanted me to find it. She left it out on purpose. Not just the laptop. The ring. The card. The missing suitcase. All of it. She was leading me somewhere. And I was already following the trail. I told myself I wouldn't watch the second video. But I did. Of course I did. After pacing the living room for nearly an hour, chewing the inside of my cheek raw, and convincing myself I'd just throw the laptop in the closet, I sat back down and clicked on 08_13. MOV, 4 days earlier than the first one. And the moment it opened, I felt something inside me sink, like a cable snapping under tension. This time, she wasn't alone. The camera angle was different. Wider, like it had been set up deliberately on a tripod. She stood in the frame, fully dressed, black jeans, gray tank top, pacing in front of a whiteboard. A whiteboard. I didn't even know we owned one. She was scribbling something, her back to the lens, and the audio was still dead silent. No ambient noise. No pin squeak. Just total, bone-dry silence. Then she stepped aside, and I saw it. The board was filled with names. Dates. Lines connecting people. Some I recognized. Her sister, her old roommate, a couple from a wedding we both attended. But most? Strangers. Dozens of them. And at the center of it all was my name. Clifton. Underlined 3 times. I couldn't move. She stared at the board for almost a full minute before she picked up a red marker and circled my name. Then she drew a line out from it. Slowly, like she was thinking through every stroke. At the end of the line, she wrote one word in shaky letters. Key. That's when I paused the video. My breath felt caught between my ribs. Like I couldn't inhale all the way. What the hell was I a key to? I hit play again, and the rest of the footage was just her pacing back and forth, occasionally looking over her shoulder at the camera, then back to the board. She never spoke, never smiled, and yet she looked focused, calm, almost like she was preparing for something, or studying a map of a city no one else knew existed. When the video ended, I noticed something else. A file in the same folder had been created just minutes after that second video. It wasn't a video. It was a text document. For _Clifton. TXT. I hesitated. Something in me, maybe some animal instinct, some primal self-preservation, screamed not to open it. But that part of me had gone quiet lately, replaced by this sick need to understand. So I opened the file. It wasn't long, just a few lines. If you're reading this, then you've already seen what I wanted you to see. Good. Keep going. But don't call anyone. Don't message anyone. And for the love of God, don't go to your mothers. They always look at the mother first. Look in the vent in the guest room. I read it once, twice, 3 times. What did she mean? They always look at the mother first. Who was they? Why would I even consider going to my mom's? None of it made sense. But I went to the guest room. The vent was behind the daybed, dusty, paint-chipped, partially rusted around the edges. I unscrewed it with the flat end of a spoon because I didn't trust myself to go searching for a screwdriver. I felt like if I left the room for even a second, the house would swallow that vent whole. Inside, a manila envelope. Thick, taped shut. My name written on the front again, same handwriting. But shakier this time. Almost frantic. I peeled it open. Inside were photos. Printed, not digital. Some of me, some of her, some of us together. Except in each photo, something was off. In one, we were eating at a diner I swear we never visited. In another, she was wearing a winter coat she never owned. And in 3 different photos, photos clearly taken years apart, we were sitting in front of the same wall clock. Same time, same lighting, same everything. And in one photo, I wasn't in it at all. But my name was, carved into the bench behind her, like it had been scratched in with a key. I dropped the photos. I don't know how long I stood there. But when I finally looked up, something outside the window caught my eye. A figure, standing across the street. Perfectly still, not moving, watching. But by the time I blinked, they were gone. I didn't sleep the second night either. I didn't even pretend to. I sat in the kitchen until sunrise, the stack of photographs spread out on the table like puzzle pieces from 5 different boxes. Every few hours, I'd pick one up and convince myself I'd missed something. A detail, a watermark, a clue to prove that what I was looking at wasn't real. But no matter how many times I stared, they never changed. They just waited for me to catch up to whatever nightmare I'd walked into. The bench haunted me the most. That last photo, the one where I wasn't in the frame. Just Talia, sitting alone, hands folded in her lap, like she was waiting for something. And behind her, on the slats of the old wooden bench, my name was carved. Not etched, gouged. Like someone had dragged a key into the wood over and over until it bled out each letter. Clifton. The angle of the photo made it feel deliberate, like whoever took it wanted to make sure the name was visible. And that wall clock? The one frozen at 4:09 p.m. in 3 separate photos, years apart? I became obsessed with it. I enlarged the image, traced its shape, Googled everything I could, brand, style, even obscure photo prop websites. Nothing. It didn't exist. And yet, there it was, mocking me with its consistency. What kind of person fakes photos with time loops? What kind of person makes that the centerpiece of their goodbye? By 8 a.m., I'd convinced myself I needed to go see the bench, if it even existed, and I needed to go alone. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even bring my phone. Just the photo in my coat pocket and the keys to the car that still smelled like her perfume every time I turned the ignition. I drove around the north side of town first, checking every park I could think of. Nothing. Then the outskirts. The small hidden places, walking trails and forgotten lots near the river where couples carved hearts into trees and teenagers smoked in the summers. And then I found it, tucked behind an old defunct greenhouse, in a part of town I hadn't been to since college. The bench wasn't just similar. It was exact. Same shape, same chipped paint, same overgrown weeds curling around its legs like they hadn't let it go in years. And the name? It was there. Faded, but real. Clifton. I ran my fingers across the grooves. I didn't remember ever being there. And yet my name was carved so deeply. The wood still splintered where the T cut too wide. I sat down slowly, heart pounding in my throat, feeling the weight of something I couldn't name pressing on my chest. The photo was still in my pocket. I pulled it out and compared the angles. Same bench, same cracked pavement in front, but no wall clock. There was no wall at all, just chain-link fencing behind me and a collapsed shed in the distance. And then I realized something that nearly made me vomit. Talia's expression in the photo, the one I thought looked peaceful, wasn't peace. It was fear, subtle, controlled. But now that I was here, now that I sat in the same place and felt how quiet, how wrong this place was, I could see it. She wasn't waiting. She was hiding. I stood up so fast I nearly tripped. And that's when I saw it. Underneath the bench, nailed to the bottom plank, hidden unless you were kneeling, a strip of black tape. I pried it off with shaking fingers. Attached to the underside was a small, flat plastic keycard. No markings, no logo. Just a black magnetic strip and a number handwritten in Sharpie on the corner, 49-7B. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it wasn't random. I pocketed the card and turned to leave, but a noise behind the fence stopped me cold. Not a shout, not footsteps. A click, like a camera shutter. I froze, spun around. No one there. Just wind rattling through the rusted skeleton of the greenhouse. But I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt watched. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to be back in my boring apartment, eating leftover pasta and pretending that the woman I loved hadn't just torn a hole in my reality. I didn't run, but I didn't walk either. And when I got home, there was a package waiting at the front door. No return label, just my name, written in handwriting that wasn't hers. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just staring at the package like it might explode if I touched it. It wasn't big, maybe the size of a shoe box, and it wasn't heavy either, at least not by the way it shifted slightly in the breeze when I opened the door. But something about it felt wrong, like it had weight beyond the physical, like opening it would unlock something I wouldn't be able to close again. I brought it inside with shaking hands and set it down on the kitchen table, clearing the photographs away like sacred objects I couldn't risk damaging. I grabbed a knife, slid it under the corner of the tape, and sliced it open with a deliberate slowness that made my stomach hurt. Inside, two things. The first was a notebook, spiral-bound, beat to hell, pages yellowed and corners frayed. I recognized it instantly. It was mine. From college. A journal I used to keep when I thought I might be a writer. It was filled with half-finished story ideas, fragmented thoughts, poems too embarrassing to read aloud. I hadn't seen it in nearly a decade. I thought I lost it during a move. But here it was. And inside the front cover, something had been added. In ink far darker than anything I'd written. Do you remember what you almost wrote? No signature. No context. Just that sentence. I flipped through the pages, heart hammering, until I found something that stopped me cold. A short entry I had no memory of writing. But it was in my handwriting. The dream again. I'm at the bench, but I'm not me. She's sitting alone, and someone's taking pictures. I ask who. They say, you told us to. The entry was dated 5 years ago. There's no way. I never wrote that. I never dreamed that. But it was there. In my scrawl. Same crooked E's. Same lowercase I without a dot. And the second item in the box? A flash drive. No label. Just silver metal and black plastic, worn at the edges. I didn't want to plug it in. I really didn't. But I did. The drive contained one folder. Inside, a single video. Titled, Watch This Alone. It was 22 minutes long. I hit play. The footage was grainy, almost like it had been recorded through glass. There was no sound, and the colors were washed out like security cam footage from an abandoned building. At first, it showed a hallway. Long, narrow, industrial-looking. Fluorescent lights overhead flickering like something from a horror movie. A woman walked into frame. It was Talia. She looked over her shoulder 3 times as she moved. Not scared exactly, but alert. Focused. She opened a door and stepped inside. The camera cut to a new angle. A small, sterile room. One desk. One chair. No windows. On the desk, photos. Of me. In places I didn't recognize. At a grocery store. Walking to my car. Once, sleeping at my desk. And then, in the footage, she took something out of her coat pocket. It was the engagement ring. The one I had returned in the ice bucket. She set it on the desk like a final piece of evidence, then pulled out a folder and opened it. Inside, blueprints. For our apartment. Labeled with timestamps. Annotations. Paths drawn from room to room. Arrows pointing to vents, outlets, light fixtures. She pulled out a pen and began circling something. I couldn't see what. And then she looked up directly into the lens again. Her face still calm. Still unreadable. But her eyes. They were pleading. Not with fear. But urgency. Like she was begging me to understand something I hadn't yet figured out. Then the screen glitched. A single frame flashed, too fast to see clearly, but it froze the playback when I tried to rewind. The whole video crashed. I pulled the USB out and just sat there, clutching it in my palm, sweating like I'd run a marathon. What was I looking at? What the hell was this? If this was some kind of elaborate prank, it wasn't funny. If it was some kind of performance, it was too real. And if it wasn't a performance, then I was caught in something I never signed up for. I walked into the hallway, trying to breathe, trying to think, and that's when I noticed it. The light in the guest room? It was on. I hadn't turned it on. And sitting on the edge of the bed was the manila envelope. The same one I'd already opened. But now it was sealed again. I didn't touch the new envelope for a long time. I stood in the hallway, staring at it like it had grown there. Same manila color. Same weight. Same faint smudge in the corner where my thumb had pressed when I first opened it yesterday. But here it was again, sealed, resting calmly on the edge of the bed I hadn't walked into since all this started. I told myself maybe I had put it back without remembering, that I was so exhausted, so mentally wrecked, that I had resealed the thing out of some desperate subconscious need for order. That sounded reasonable for about 5 seconds. Then I remembered throwing it out. I remembered watching it crumple, watching it drop into the wastebasket in the kitchen. I remembered the sound. The sharp fold of cardboard bending into itself like a spine snapping. I walked downstairs, opened the trash can, and there it was. Still at the bottom. Still open. Still empty. And that's when something broke in me. I didn't feel fear, not the kind you can name. It was deeper than that. Like the rules of the world had shifted while I slept. Like the axis tilted 3 degrees to the left, and no one bothered to tell me. I went back upstairs and opened the second envelope. Inside, more photos. But not printed ones. Polaroids. Dozens of them. Not of her. Not of me. But of rooms. Rooms I didn't recognize. Bedrooms, offices, empty halls. In one, a red chair facing the corner. In another, a ceiling fan spinning, blurry, like the photo had been taken mid-motion. And in the last one that felt colder than all the rest, was an image of a table. A metal table. And on it, lying flat and peaceful, was a spiral-bound notebook. My notebook. The same one from college. Except this photo was dated 3 months ago. 3 months before she ever mentioned cleaning out the attic. 3 months before she said she'd found something of mine that might inspire me to write again. I dropped the Polaroid. Then I noticed something scrawled on the back in thick red ink. You've been here before. You just weren't ready to remember. That was it. No initials. No date. No logic. Just more static in my head. I sat on the floor for what felt like an hour. I remember the light shifting in the room, the sun slicing through the blinds like prison bars across the carpet. I tried to ground myself. Count objects. Recite facts I knew were real. My name is Clifton. I'm 34. I work tech support for a hospital. My favorite cereal is Honey Clusters. I have a scar on my left knee from falling off a bike when I was 11. But every time I reached that last fact, it felt wrong. Like I had memorized it from someone else's story. Like none of it was mine anymore. That's when I remembered the key card. The black one with the number, 49-7B. I grabbed it from the drawer where I'd stashed it. It was time to see where it fit. I didn't know where to start. But something was pulling me. Not curiosity. Not fear. Something stranger. Like gravity made of questions. I packed a backpack, flashlight, water, gloves, the photos, the notebook. I even brought the USB drive, though I didn't know why. Maybe I thought I'd find a place to plug it in. Maybe I thought someone would be waiting. The only building I could think of with numbered units that matched that format was a self-storage complex out by the train station. I hadn't been there in years, but the numbers, 49-7B, felt like the kind of label they'd use. And when I pulled into the cracked parking lot, I felt that now familiar pinch in the base of my neck. Like I was on a script, following cues I hadn't written. The gate was open. The lights were dim. Unit 49 was down a side hallway. Most of the units around it were padlocked, dark, forgotten. But 49? Its keypad glowed green, like it was waiting for me. I held my breath, slid the card. The lock clicked open. I pulled the door upward. It screeched like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside, a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. And under it, perfectly centered on the concrete floor, was a table. A metal table. The same one from the Polaroid. On it, another envelope. And beneath that, something wrapped in black cloth. I stepped inside. The light bulb buzzed overhead. The air was thick, chemical, like someone had been cleaning with ammonia and bleach and didn't bother to air it out. I opened the envelope first. This time it wasn't a photo. It was a document. Printed. Official. Request for withdrawal. Voluntary test participant program / phase 2A. My name was on it. And hers. Next to it, a signature that looked like mine, but wasn't. At the bottom, a date I didn't recognize. And a warning in bold. Any breach of memory sequencing protocol is considered a violation of confidentiality under Clause 6. 7. You are not authorized to recall what never occurred. I dropped the page, tore the cloth off the object beneath. It was a laptop. Hers. The same one I had seen days earlier. But this one wasn't wiped clean. This one was open, and it was already playing a video of me, sitting in that same room, staring into the camera, saying, "If you're seeing this, then you broke the loop. You need to listen carefully, because we don't have much time." And then static. And then black. The screen went black, but the echo of my own voice lingered in the room like smoke after a fire. We don't have much time. I stared at the laptop, at the reflection of my pale, stunned face in the glossy screen. My mouth slightly open, my hands trembling on the edge of the metal table. A small part of me expected the light above to flicker and die. For someone, to come through the door. But no one did. I was alone. Utterly, truly alone. But not in a way that felt empty. In a way that finally made sense. I sat down in the folding chair beside the table and tried to breathe. Not shallow panic breaths like before, but deep ones. Intentional ones. Breaths that pulled me back into my own body, into my own mind. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, I felt like I was really there. Not drifting. Not watching. There. I didn't remember everything at once. It came in flashes. Like old film reels jamming and stuttering back to life. The bench. The notebook. The dreams I told no one about. The time loops I dismissed as anxiety. The sessions. The recordings. The conversation with Talia months ago where I laughed and said, "God, sometimes I wish I could just erase certain memories. Start fresh." And her face when I said it. She didn't laugh. She nodded. Softly. Like a woman who already knew where that kind of wish leads. The program had a name. I still don't know if it was government-backed or private. She never told me the details. Only that I had asked to forget. That I volunteered to be the first test subject in a memory sequencing trial. One that could wipe select experiences, reshuffle trauma, rewrite emotional timelines. Like decluttering the attic, I joked once. Get rid of the old junk, make space for something new. She said yes, but she knew the risks. And when it started to unravel, she tried to fix it. Not by hiding, not by running, but by leading me back. Not to the past, to myself. Every photo, every breadcrumb, every random object I found, she placed it with intention. Not to confuse me, not to hurt me, but to wake me up gently. To let me find the path back through the fog instead of forcing it on me. Because she knew the truth wouldn't stick unless I claimed it on my own. She stayed distant. She let me fall apart. Because that's what I needed to do to rebuild. And sitting there in that silent storage unit, next to a laptop that held more secrets than answers, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Not because she lied, but because she chose not to control the ending. I left the unit before sunset. Drove home without checking the rearview mirror. And when I walked through the door, the apartment didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt real. Lived in. Mine. A few days later, a letter arrived. No return address. Just a note in Talia's handwriting. You're safe now. Everything else is yours to build. There was no number. No invitation. No explanation. And that was okay. Because I finally understood. She hadn't betrayed me. She had protected something I'd been too fragile to face, and then let me recover it in my own way. I still don't know if I'll see her again, but if I do, I won't ask for more answers. I'll just thank her for the silence, for the patience, for the impossible kindness of letting me walk through the dark, knowing she'd already left the lights on behind me. I sleep now, fully, and when I wake up, I don't look for her in the other room. I look in the mirror, and for the first time in years, I see me.